It's a beautiful day here in the low country, and I'm not out on my boat, and this is why. The boat's bleeding. Where is this coming from? Unfortunately, it's the trim tabs. The hydraulic trim tabs on this boat are about as old as the boat is itself. I believe they're from about 1998. You can see there's a little bit of glossiness here where the hydraulic fluid is seeping out between the O-rings. I've already replaced the O-rings on these once, and I don't feel like doing it again. So we're gonna go all in, and we're gonna completely change these bennets over to a electric trim tab. I got this kit from Lectrotabs. It's a replacement for the Bennett hydraulic system, and yeah, they're really pretty stout. This is a direct replacement, so I'll be able to remove the hydraulic actuator, replace it with these electric actuators, remove all the hydraulic hoses, and basically connect these right up to my switch tabs. So I also picked up some parts from New Wire Marine, some ring terminals with heat shrink, extra heat shrink. I actually picked up a 10 amp resettable breaker because the one on my nav anchor broke as I was pulling the panel out. The other thing I picked up were these, which are little jumpers. And these jumpers are super cool because what they're going to allow me to do is reconfigure or rewire the rocker switches quick and easy. These things are a lifesaver. I'll show you how they are used, but man, they're going to make the rewiring this super easy. So the plan, I think, is pretty straightforward. The first thing I'm going to do is disconnect the lines from the actual pump. I've got a couple of containers to catch hopefully most of the hydraulic fluid that may come out of those lines. The second thing we're going to do is then disconnect the lines from where it goes through the transom to the old trim tabs, hydraulic trim tabs. Once again, hoping that we catch some of the hydraulic fluid, trying to keep the mess to a minimum. After I disconnect the lines on both sides, I'll come in here, remove the actual pump, disconnect the wiring, and then remove the trim tabs off the back of the boat. So I should actually just remove the ram. The actual tab stays, but we're gonna remove the ram itself. Remove the rams, clean up the area, run the new ones, run the wiring for the new ones, and then I'll show you what I'm gonna do for the wiring. So let's go ahead and get started. So I used a regular screwdriver to hand loosen these just in case they're bound up or something. I didn't want to put a power tool to it, but now that I've got them loose, I'm going to go ahead and just zip them out real quick. So go ahead and get the last screw out, and then we got to figure out how to remove this piece from the hull. It's been on there for decades. I anticipate they probably use something like 5200. And I want to get it off the boat, but I don't want to damage my gel coat. So let me think about that for a second. Well, I thought this was going to be attached a little more solidly, but I gave it a little bit of a pull off camera, and what do you know? Pops right out. So just like we did with the starboard side, we're now over into the port side. We're going to go ahead and take a 1/2 inch, loosen up this so we can remove the hydraulic line. We'll go ahead and remove the elbow with a 5/8, and then we'll remove the actual trim tab actuator, the hydraulic actuator, off of the trim tab. One thing I did do is I made sure to retract the rams as far as possible, putting as much fluid as I could back into the hydraulic reservoir, just to try to keep the mess to a minimum. So what I'm using is a panel removing tool for cars, and I'm just going to take it and try to get it behind this, try to keep from damaging the gel coat and get it to pop out. And there you go. What I'm going to do is go ahead and remove these two screws remove the whole piece, and then I'll push the pin out when it's not sitting on the boat itself. I don't know if you can see, but this is definitely the actuator that has been leaking the hydraulic fluid. So the next thing I'm going to do is remove some of this old adhesive and sealant, and then clean up this area and prep the surface, get it ready for the new actuator. So similar to the other one, we're going to go ahead and pull these two screws, remove the ram, and then we're going to go ahead and clean up this area up here. It's kind of a pain, but I finally got the hydraulic hose out. I ended up having to cut it into sections and removing it out of the bilge. As you can see, it led a little bit of a bloodbath. I'm going to have to scrub my bilge out pretty good. Now what we have to do is remove this part of the Bennett tab. This is going to reconnect back to the original trim tabs on the back of the boat, but what we need to do is swap this with the one that comes from Lectrotab. So we're going to take, there's a little push pin here. We're going to take that pin, push it out, similar, push the pin out on this one, and then swap them over. In the instructions, it says to use existing Bennett lower bracket and pin. So the Bennett lower bracket and pin is this piece right here. And you're supposed to remove this, which I have. But what's strange is these holes actually match the holes that are already in the existing trim tab. In fact, I took this, put it in the trim tab, lined it up, and it fit. So a little confused by that, but to be honest with you, I'm gonna go ahead, remove the Bennett one. I'm gonna put the Lectrotab back on and see if that will really work on my boat. In fact, what I'll do is I'll go ahead and put it back on this one. I had just removed the pin out of here to remove this, and yeah, let's see if it works. So let's see if that bracket fits my tabs. What do you know? It does. Excellent. So in the next part of the instructions, we remove the top bracket, and it indicates that I need to drill out these inside holes. They're the ones that will match the old hole pattern from the Bennett trim tabs. So these hole patterns should match this inside hole there. There you go. Now we're ready to mount these onto the boat. Before I seal this up, I want to run the control cable through the bracket and through the hull. I don't know if you can see, but there's a little pocket right here. And I want to fill this pocket with sealant after I have everything in place. So, in principle, this is what it's going to look like. You need a little bit of wire here so that it has a nice arc and bend in it, and a little bit of, and it's a little loose. But what we'll do is we'll bring it back, we'll fill in here, fill the seal everything in, smash it together, and go ahead and reconnect it. The only other thing I have to do is I have to run the bolt back through here into the actuator itself to hold it into place. There we go. We'll go ahead and do the other side the same way. All right, the pump is unscrewed, so we're going to go ahead and start pulling it out here. without hopefully making too much of a mess. So now that we have the pump basically out, I want to disconnect the wiring. So that wiring's got to come off. First, what I want to do is remove the screw on the top of here and remove this plastic protector. The wiring comes up and it has a very specific color code, blue, yellow, red, green, black. So what I'm going to have to do is come down here and cut the wires. We're not going to need all 5 of these connections. We're only going to need the 4, the red, blue, green, and yellow. Those are the 4 we're going to need because we're actually going to tap ground power up at the dash to send power to the actuators. Now I'm going to do my wiring here inside the hatch. I wouldn't recommend this normally because I have a lot of cable for the actuators. The plan is I'm going to be making a new dash panel, and when I do, I'll pull the trim tab wiring all the way through. But for now, I'm just going to wire it up here in the hatch. So change of plans. Originally, I was going to take the existing wiring that's right here in the console and runs all the way to the back and ended up terminating to the pump back there and just connecting these wires, looping them up and setting them back there. However, for the last hour and 40 minutes, I've been struggling to take the wires for the new trim tabs, run them through here up to the console, and I'm going to go ahead and make the connections here. Removing the switch panel, I'm going to take a look at this wiring, specifically the jumpers for the wiring. So this wiring was set up for the hydraulic trim tabs. Now that we have electric trim tabs, we have to change the configuration of the wiring. Now what's really good is in the instructions, it will show you which wire to connect to which one of these for the Bennett hydraulic trim tabs. Now in my case on my boat, these are matched to the wiring code that Bennett has for their hydraulic pump. It's going to make it really easy. I'll show you the instructions. I'm also going to link 2 videos. One video is for how to wire electric trim tabs. The other video is for how to wire hydraulic trim tabs using a Carling style rocker switch. So one of these rocker switches, you have a momentary, what's called an on-off-on momentary switch. The links come to us from New Wire Marine. They did a really good video on how to wire up a Carling style switch. So I'm actually going to use the video, follow along, making sure that I set these jumpers correctly. Now, if you have a Bennett style switch on your boat, Lectrotab does provide a replacement rocker switches, or the ones that have the LED lights and stuff like that, and show how to connect it. Now in my case, because I'm using aftermarket Carling switches, it doesn't do me any good. However, what is good is down here. Down here are the instructions that I need to connect the Lectrotab wiring to the existing Bennett style or Bennett colored wiring that I have on my boat. The other thing I'm going to do, which may be hard to film, but the wiring is actually going to get connected down here. You'll see I've got a terminal block. So the output wiring is going to replace that bottom wiring you see there, and I'm going to leave the top wiring, which is the original color-coded wiring, that goes up to the harness. So it's going to be this bottom wiring down here. You can see the green, red, blue, and yellow. Those 4 I'm going to disconnect and run the new Lectro trim tabs right to that terminal block. So I've removed all of the jumpers off of the rocker switches. And this is a momentary on-off-on, and it's an 8-terminal rocker switch. I'm going to link to another video done by New Wire Marine that explains what's called the 10-terminal switch, which gives you an idea of what these different blades do in powering things up. But in principle, going over it pretty quick here, the center ones right here, these 2, is really your inputs, right? So we're going to do a positive input on one side, we're going to do a negative input on the other. The blades above it are the outputs. And the way it works is when you hit the tab, so when you take this switch and you press up like this, so when you're pressing it up, that power or ground, depending on how you have it wired, actually comes out of this bottom blade. Similarly, when you push down on the switch, the power or the negative comes out of the top blade. Now, These two up here are for what's called the independent light. So I could run a backlight to these, so when at night, these will light up so you can see the trim tab labels on the actuator covers, on the switch covers. I don't have mine wired up like that, so these two aren't being used right now. But the 6 that I'm going to use in this momentary switch are going to be these 6 here. Power in, ground in, and then power out, ground out, and ground out. And then there's a way that we have to do a jump on these, doing a crisscross, and that's what will ultimately send either power or ground out through these wires, which will then run the electric trim tabs. Again, great video done by New Wire Marine. Check it out. Really explains how this whole process works. I'm going to go ahead and knock this out, put it together, and show you the results. So one thing I am going to have to do, which I've already sent it down, I'll connect it later, is I do need to send a ground. So I made a ground wire, and then these jumpers make it really easy. I can connect my jumper here. I'm going to have a ground connection here, and then I can jump that ground over to here. Now one thing, I want to connect this specific ground back to my grounding block, which I have in the console. If you've got ground wires on the back of your switches like this, that's only for backlights. Don't connect your trim tab ground to these backlight grounds. You want to send this to a regular ground. The other thing we're going to do is I've got them disconnected, but these are the 2 resettable push buttons, resettable breakers. And this is, again, where the jumper is going to come in handy, because all I have to do to get power now in is I connect the jumper, connect it to the breaker, like that. What I've done to color code these, I have a black jumper, which is going to go from here to here, and it's got the little tab on it because this is where I'm going to connect to my wiring for the trim tab. So it's going to come over to here. So there's my black pole side. So this is the side that's running the negative or the ground side. Then I have a positive one here, which is going to do the same thing. I take my positive power out of the top, and I'm going to send that down to the back side, crisscross it this way, onto the switch, and then I'll make my connection down here at the bottom end of the switch. All right, everything is wired up, ready to go. I've got the leads going out to the pumps here, all my crisscrosses and jumpers in place. So at this point, reconnect it, and we'll make the connection down here at the bottom. We're going to make the connection to my terminal block, and then we'll be ready to test. All right, the connections are made. The next thing to do is I'm going to connect the ground, and then before my OCD gets the best of me and I start to wire tie and clean everything up, I'm going to go ahead and run the actuators through their initial test to make sure that I wire it correctly. All right, let's see if this works. So what if pushing on the tab button didn't give me the result I wanted? What if I was pushing on the top button, but the tab retracted? Obviously, when I push on the top button, I want the valve to go down. It's really simple. You can just come in here and swap these jumpers in the back with the actual connections that you made. So if it's not working the way you want, just take them and swap them, and it'll work fine. All right, so we're done. Everything is working as I expected. Actuators are working great. All the wiring's run. Now I'm just gonna button up the last things and actually give the boat a good wash. Any takeaways from this? Yeah, sure. It's an easy process. It's really not that hard. Basic hand tools, you can do this. A little bit of wiring knowledge. Definitely take a look at the jumpers and the videos from New Wire Marine. They can certainly give you a lot of help in doing this. Overall, it was a pretty simple process. It really wasn't that difficult. Hardest part was running the wiring from the bilge all the way up into the console, and just because it's fiddly and it's a pain in the butt. But otherwise, the project's done, looks good, works good, no complaints.